In the small town of Elmridge, where the trees whispered ancient secrets and the wind seemed to carry more than just the scent of wildflowers, Julia Morgan was about to discover that some voices are heard with more than just the ears. A respected psychologist at the local community center, Julia had always been fascinated by the human mind, its complexities, its nuances, and its profound secrets. Yet she was soon to learn that her own mind harbored depths she had yet to explore. A peculiar sensation. It began on a seemingly ordinary Thursday. Julia was walking through the serene paths of Willow Park after a long day filled with client sessions, her mind replaying the various concerns and breakthroughs of her patients. As she passed under the old oak tree, the one that locals claimed was as old as the town itself, a sudden chill ran down her spine. It was an oddly specific feeling, as if someone had whispered her name right into her ear, though no one was near. Shaking off the unsettling feeling, Julia continued her walk. But the sensation didn't leave her. It clung to her like a shadow at dusk, subtle yet undeniably present. She tried to reason it away with scientific explanations, perhaps a draft or the rustling of leaves, but deep down she knew it was something more. The forgotten dream. That night, as Julia lay in bed, the events of the day slipped away into the realm of dreams. She found herself standing in an impossibly vast library, its shelves teeming with books that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The air was thick with the musk of old paper and the tang of leather. It was a place of knowledge, both sacred and profound. As she wandered through the aisles, a book fell to the floor with a thud that echoed off the stone walls. Bending to pick it up, Julia noticed the title, The Language of Intuition. Her fingers traced the embossed letters as a voice, soft and melodic, spoke directly into her heart. "Listen." She woke with a start. The dream was vivid in her mind, a stark contrast to her usual forgotten wisps of nighttime thoughts. It felt like a message, a sign. But from whom? And what was it trying to tell her? The encounter. The next day, Julia's curiosity got the better of her. During her lunch break, she visited the town's old bookstore, a quaint little shop tucked away behind Main Street. The bell above the door jingled cheerily as she entered, the smell of old books enveloping her like a warm embrace. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she felt a pull towards the back of the store. There, hidden away in a dimly lit corner, was a section on psychic abilities and intuition. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw it, a replica of the book from her dream. As she flipped through the pages, the store owner, Mrs. Blackwood, approached her. The elderly woman had a reputation for being somewhat of a recluse, but her eyes twinkled with an unspoken knowledge as she spoke. "You're not the first to seek answers in these pages," Mrs. Blackwood said, her voice low and raspy. "And you won't be the last. But remember, the path of intuition is as personal as it is mysterious." Julia purchased the book, her mind racing with questions. As she left the store, the wind seemed to whisper once more, a gentle, encouraging caress against her cheek. Sign unfolding over the following weeks, Julia began to notice more signs. Her intuition seemed sharper, more attuned. She found herself predicting things before they happened, small things like a friend's surprise visit or a sudden change in the weather. She also became more sensitive to her surroundings, picking up on subtle shifts in her clients' moods and thoughts, sometimes even before they spoke. It was as if she was tuning into a frequency she hadn't known existed. As Julia delved deeper into the study of intuition, she understood that what she was experiencing was not just random chance. These were messages, signs from a deeper part of herself, or perhaps from something even more profound. But it wasn't until the incident at the Cedar Lake that she fully realized the power and responsibility that came with this newfound gift. That day, her intuition would lead her to a discovery so startling it would change her life forever. But that story is for another chapter. For now, Julia knew one thing for certain. She was on a path that few had the courage to tread, and she was ready to follow wherever it might lead. DB Julia's journey into the realms of intuition was not merely an exploration. It was a transformation. The incident at Cedar Lake had opened her eyes to possibilities she had never dared to imagine. The day had started like any other, with the tranquil surface of the lake reflecting the clear blue skies, but it was to end with revelations that would shake the very foundations of Julia's understanding of reality. A disturbance at Cedar Lake. It was a cool Saturday morning when Julia decided to take a walk around Cedar Lake. The lake, surrounded by dense forests and steeped in local folklore, had always been a place of solace for her. Today, however, the air felt different, charged, almost electric. Julia's skin prickled with anticipation as she neared the water's edge. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. A figure was standing by the lake, motionless, staring into the water. As she approached, the figure turned and Julia gasped. It was an older woman, her face marked by time, but her eyes were unmistakably those of her late grandmother, Helen. But how could this be? Helen had passed away over a decade ago. "Trust your eyes, Julia," the woman spoke, her voice a soothing balm to Julia's rising panic. "What you see is real as the intuition that led you here." The lesson of the lake. The apparition of her grandmother, whether a hallucination or a spirit, taught Julia about the layers of time, a concept where past, present, and future coexist, accessible only to those who can tune into their intuitive senses. The woman by the lake explained that the water was a conduit, a natural amplifier of psychic energies, and a mirror into the soul. As they talked, the woman imparted knowledge about Julia's family history, revealing a lineage of intuitive sensitives, each with unique abilities that had been misunderstood, even feared. Julia learned that her gift was not a fluke, but a legacy. Before disappearing, the woman, or the echo of Helen, handed Julia an old worn locket that she had never seen before. Inside was a photo of a young Helen, looking radiant and full of life. "Remember, intuition connects us not just to the future, but to the past as well," she said, as she faded away, leaving Julia alone with the rippling reflections of the lake. New realities shaken. Julia returned home, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She spent hours researching psychic phenomena, trying to find scientific explanations for her experiences. Yet the more she read, the more she realized that science could only explain so much. The rest required faith. Faith in her own experiences, in the unseen forces of the world, and in the knowledge passed down through generations. Julia began to experiment with her abilities, learning to trust the subtle impulses that often guided her actions. She practiced meditation by the lake, where the thin veil between past and present seemed most permeable. These sessions brought clarity and strength, honing her intuition to a fine edge. An unexpected guide. As autumn gave way to winter, Julia's reputation as a psychologist who could see beyond grew. People from all over town and even from neighboring areas started seeking her guidance, not just for psychological healing, but for spiritual insights as well. One chilly December morning, a young man named Mark came to her office. He was skeptical but desperate, plagued by dreams of a sister he never had, and driven by a sense of impending doom. He sought Julia's help. Listening to Mark, Julia felt a familiar tingle of intuition. She knew that Mark's visit was no coincidence, and that her abilities were about to be tested in ways she had never imagined. As she prepared to delve into Mark's subconscious, she felt the weight of her ancestors' legacy on her shoulders, but also their strength flowing through her. Each session with Mark peeled back layers of hidden truths, drawing them both deeper into the mystery of his visions. Julia was no longer just a psychologist. She was a bridge between worlds, a guide to the lost and seeking. The path was fraught with challenges, but Julia knew she was exactly where she needed to be. As the winter snow began to fall outside her office window, Julia felt a deep sense of purpose envelop her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them, armed with the power of intuition and the echoes of her ancestors' wisdom. As the first snow of the season blanketed Elm Ridge in pristine white, The boundaries between the seen and unseen grew ever more fluid. Julia's office became a sanctuary, not just for those seeking mental clarity, but also for those touched by the mysterious. With each passing day, her understanding deepened, and her resolve strengthened. The encounters with Mark were only the beginning. Unraveling dreams. Mark's sessions became the focal point of Julia's weeks. His dreams, vivid and disturbing, seemed to hint at something far greater than mere subconscious musings. They were filled with symbols, cryptic messages that needed decoding. Julia used a blend of traditional psychology and her intuitive insights to guide Mark through the labyrinth of his mind. One particular dream recurred more frequently, a house he claimed he had never seen in waking life. Yet in his dreams, it was a place he knew intimately, a home filled with laughter and sorrow in equal measure. It was here, in this imagined or perhaps remembered place, that he always found the girl he called his sister. A breakthrough. During one intense session, as a winter storm raged outside, Mark slipped into a deep, trance-like state. Julia, guided by her intuition, led him through the rooms of the dream house. As they explored, Mark's descriptions grew increasingly detailed. Suddenly he paused, his voice trembling. "She's here," he whispered. "She's waiting for me in the garden." The atmosphere in the room shifted. Julia could feel a presence, a thinning of the veil between realities. She urged Mark to approach the girl. As he did, a flood of emotions overtook him: recognition, love, grief. The girl turned to him, her eyes mirroring his own, and spoke of a past life they had shared, revealing that they had been siblings in that distant reality. The weight of past lives. The revelation was staggering. Mark, a staunch skeptic, found himself confronted with a truth that defied logical explanation. Julia helped him process the flood of memories and emotions, anchoring him with her calm presence. The sessions that followed focused on integrating this profound knowledge, allowing Mark to understand the purpose of these visions. They were not merely echoes of a past life, but messages urging him to resolve unfinished business. Expanding the circle word of Julia's unique approach spread beyond Elmridge. She began receiving letters and emails from individuals all over the country, each with their own strange experiences and phenomena. It was clear that her work was needed on a much larger scale than she had ever anticipated. One letter in particular caught her attention. It was from a woman named Elise, who wrote of experiencing similar intuitive flashes and visions. Elise spoke of feeling isolated in her experiences, frightened by what she might discover if she delved too deeply. Her words resonated with Julia, reminding her of her own initial fears. A new alliance moved by Elise's letter. Julia invited her to Elmridge. They met at Julia's office, where they shared stories and insights. It became apparent that Elise had her own unique gifts, though they had been suppressed for years out of fear and misunderstanding. Together, they decided to form a group, a circle of intuitives. They would meet regularly to explore their abilities in a safe and supportive environment, to learn from each other, and to help those who were struggling to make sense of their own psychic experiences. A gathering of souls. The inaugural meeting of the Circle was held at the community center on a cold January evening. Individuals from various walks of life came together, each bringing their own unique experiences and stories. They shared not just their fears and uncertainties, but also their hopes and the peace they found in discovering they were not alone. Julia watched as connections were formed, as understanding and acceptance blossomed. She knew this was just the beginning. The circle would grow, and their collective knowledge would deepen. The journey was long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time Julia felt truly prepared to lead, to heal, and to bridge the gap between worlds. As the snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in silence and peace, Julia felt a profound gratitude. The path she had embarked upon was not an easy one, but it was filled with purpose and the promise of discovery. The veil had thinned, and the journey was just beginning. As the circle of intuitives expanded, so did the depth and complexity of the experiences they shared. Elmridge, a town once just a speck on the map, began to attract attention from those seeking understanding and those skeptical of the inexplicable. Amidst this growing intrigue, Julia remained steadfast, guided by her intuition and the echoes of her ancestors. A sudden visitor. Late one February evening, as the last of the day's light faded from the sky, a knock came at Julia's door. She opened it to find a man standing on her porch, his face weary, eyes haunted. He introduced himself as Thomas, a professor of anthropology from the city university. He had heard of Julia's work, and driven by his own recent inexplicable experiences, sought her help. Thomas was reluctant at first to share his story, but Julia's reassuring presence gradually eased his reservations. He recounted his research trip to an ancient site in South America, where he had encountered a series of unexplained phenomena, visions of past ceremonies, voices whispering in a lost language, and the persistent feeling of being watched. The artifact. As their conversation deepened, Thomas revealed the source of his turmoil: a small, intricately carved artifact he had found at the site. Since bringing it home, the strange occurrences had intensified. He pulled the object from his bag, a stone with symbols that seemed to pulsate with an eerie energy. Julia, holding the artifact, felt a surge of visions. The stone was not merely a relic, it was a conduit, a key to memories long buried. She saw a civilization that had understood much about the spiritual realms, more than modern science could explain. The stone was meant to bridge the living and the spiritual, to communicate lessons and warnings. The integration. Determined to help Thomas and uncover the full story behind the artifact, Julia suggested they use it as a focal point for a circle meeting. The group gathered, each member sensitive to the energies of the room. As they meditated on the artifact, the air thickened. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to dance. Slowly, a picture began to form. A society that had collapsed under the weight of its own spiritual discoveries, unable to handle the power they had unleashed. The voices were those of the past, eager to communicate their history and caution. The warning. The message was clear. Knowledge and power, especially of the spiritual kind, required responsibility and wisdom. The group was deeply moved, understanding more than ever the need to approach their gifts with respect and caution. For Julia, the experience reaffirmed her role not just as a leader, but as a guardian of these ancient wisdoms. Facing the skeptics. The increasing visibility of Julia's circle drew not only seekers, but skeptics. A local journalist, intrigued by the stories swirling around Julia's work, published an article that painted her group as mystics dabbling in pseudoscience. This public scrutiny brought challenges. Skeptics and critics, armed with doubt and disbelief, confronted Julia, demanding proof, dismissing her experiences as delusions. Julia faced this opposition with the calm certainty that had guided her through her own journey of discovery. She offered to meet with critics, to share her and her group's experiences openly. Many remained unconvinced, but others found themselves questioning their disbelief, struck by the sincerity and consistency of the stories they heard. Deepening bonds. Through these trials, the bond within the circle grew stronger. They supported each other, finding strength in their shared experiences and in the knowledge that they were part of something much larger than themselves. Each meeting, each shared story wove them closer together, building a tapestry of interconnected lives and pasts. Julia, reflecting on the path she had chosen, knew that the road ahead would be fraught with more challenges. But as she looked around at the faces of those in the circle, she felt a surge of hope. They were building something that could withstand skepticism and fear. A community of understanding, of shared human experience across time and space. As the night grew deeper and the stars shone brightly above Elmridge, Julia felt a profound connection to the cosmos, to the past and the future. She knew that whatever shadows they might face, the light they shared would guide them through. The journey was far from over, but Julia was ready to lead, to discover, and to protect the sacred knowledge they were uncovering. The winter slowly thawed into spring, bringing with it a renewal of life and energy, both in nature and within Julia's circle. The challenges and skepticism they had faced during the colder months had only served to strengthen their resolve and deepen their connections. Elmridge, once a quiet town, was now a hub of spiritual discovery, attracting more souls seeking understanding and solace. The gathering storm. As the circle prepared for their first spring meeting, Julia felt a palpable shift in the air. A tension that seemed to herald the arrival of both new beginnings and unresolved conflicts. The night before the meeting, she experienced a vivid dream. She found herself standing in a vast field under a stormy sky, lightning illuminating the dark clouds above. In the dream, figures appeared around her, each tethered to her by luminous threads. These threads pulsed with light, and where they touched the ground, flowers bloomed instantly, thriving despite the tempest. The vision was clear. The connections she and her circle forged were not just with each other, but with the very essence of life, capable of bringing growth even in adversity. A new member. At the spring meeting, a new face appeared. His name was David, a botanist who had recently moved to Elmridge. He had heard of the circle through a colleague and, driven by his own subtle experiences with plant communication, sought to explore this connection deeper. His arrival was timely. The dream Julia had experienced seemed to directly foreshadow the joining of someone with a deep bond to the natural world. David shared his research, which focused on the intuitive communication between humans and plants. He spoke of the electromagnetic signals plants emit and how these could potentially align with human emotions and thoughts. His theories fascinated the group and opened new avenues of exploration, bridging the gap between science and spirituality. The unseen connection. Inspired by David's insights, the circle decided to conduct an experiment. They gathered in a local greenhouse surrounded by a myriad of plant species to meditate and attempt to communicate intuitively with the plant life around them. The results were astonishing. Many reported feelings of peace and rejuvenation, while others received vivid impressions or messages from the plants. Julia, focusing on a centuries-old oak tree outside, felt a deep sorrow emanating from it. She realized that the tree was mourning the loss of the trees cut down around it over the years. This revelation brought a new perspective to the circle's work, the understanding that every living being, not just humans, shared in the web of life and could communicate its feelings and history, challenges and doubts. Despite their successes, not all was serene in Elmridge. The local church pastor, Reverend Miller, publicly criticized Julia's circle, questioning their beliefs and practices as contrary to traditional spiritual values. He argued that they were meddling with forces beyond human understanding or control. Julia approached Reverend Miller, offering to discuss their perspectives and find common ground. Their conversation was intense yet respectful. Julia explained that their work, like his, sought to understand the deeper mysteries of existence. She invited him to attend a meeting, hoping to demonstrate that their intentions were rooted in healing and unity. Bridging worlds. Reverend Miller's eventual visit to the circle was a pivotal moment. He observed, asked questions, and while he maintained his reservations, he acknowledged the sincerity and positive impact of the group's endeavors. This encounter opened a dialogue between different spiritual perspectives within Elmridge, fostering a broader community understanding. As spring gave way to summer, the circle's influence continued to grow. Their experiments with plant communication developed into community projects that combined ecological awareness with spiritual practices, reinforcing the town's connection with its natural surroundings. Julia watched as the seeds planted by their efforts sprouted and flourished, much like the flowers in her dream. She knew that each challenge faced and each bridge built strengthened the unseen ties that connected them all. As the leader of this ever-evolving circle, Julia felt a profound sense of purpose and hope for the future, ready to guide her community into deeper communion with the world around them. As summer enveloped Elmridge in its warm embrace, the community continued to evolve, drawing ever closer in their shared quest for understanding and connection. Julia's circle, now a cornerstone of the town's spiritual life, inspired a series of community-wide initiatives that blended ecological stewardship with spiritual exploration. A community united. The success of their plant communication experiments had ignited a passion among Elmridge residents for environmental conservation combined with spiritual practice. Inspired by Julia and the Circle's efforts, the town launched a project called Green Souls, aimed at revitalizing neglected spaces and integrating them with areas for meditation and reflection. Julia was delighted to see how her vision had taken root in practical ways. Parks, community gardens, and even unused lots were transformed into vibrant spaces filled with native plants and designed with pathways that encouraged contemplative walks. Each space was a testament to the town's commitment to healing both the land and the community's spirit. The Summer Solstice Celebration. To celebrate the summer solstice, the Circle organized an event that would combine Elmridge's newfound love for nature with their explorations into the intuitive. The celebration was to take place in the largest of the new community gardens, featuring guided meditations, discussions on spiritual ecology, and a communal art project where everyone could contribute to a large mural depicting the town's journey. As the longest day of the year unfolded, the garden filled with people, their faces alight with excitement and community spirit. The event was a reflection of how far the town had come, embracing not only the Circle's ideas, but expanding them in ways that Julia had never anticipated. An unexpected challenge. During the celebration, a sudden summer storm approached, darkening the sky and threatening to dissolve the gathering. Julia watched as clouds rolled in, feeling a pang of disappointment. However, she sensed an opportunity, a chance to demonstrate the Circle's teachings about harmony and resilience in the face of challenges. She gathered everyone to the center of the garden and led a spontaneous meditation focused on balance and acceptance. As they meditated, the rain began to fall, light at first, then growing in intensity. Instead of scattering, the people remained, their spirits undampened, embracing the rain as a part of the celebration. The storm passed as quickly as it had come, leaving the air fresh and the plants glistening with raindrops. The community's resolve to continue the celebration, despite the weather, turned the event into a powerful symbol of their unity and strength. Deepening connections. As the solstice celebration drew to a close, the mural, now complete, stood as a vibrant testament to Elmridge's journey. It depicted the natural world interwoven with human figures, each thread and color representing a different aspect of their shared experiences. Julia took a moment to reflect on the mural, realizing it was more than just a piece of community art. It was a map of their collective soul, a visual representation of the Circle's impact on Elmridge. Each color, each line told a story of challenge, growth, and unity. Looking forward, encouraged by the success of the solstice celebration and the ongoing positive impact of the Green Souls project, Julia began to plan future activities. She envisioned a series of workshops and talks not just about spiritual practices but also about practical applications of these in daily life, from sustainable living to personal wellness. The Circle was no longer just a group of individuals exploring the unseen. It was the heart of a community, actively weaving together the threads of the spiritual and the material, the individual and the collective. As the sun set on the longest day of the year, Julia felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Elmridge had transformed under her guidance, and she knew that the journey was far from over. There was much more to explore, much more to learn, and much more to heal. But for now, she was content to watch the stars appear above, confident in the path they were on, and eager for the adventures that lay ahead. As the vibrant hues of summer deepened into the rich golds and reds of autumn, Elmridge, under Julia's nurturing guidance, had become a beacon of unity and spiritual exploration. The community, once a quiet, unremarkable town, now thrived as a model of how deeply intertwined lives could lead to a profound collective strength. Julia's Circle, at the heart of this transformation, was about to face a challenge that would test their bond and deepen their understanding of the spiritual dimensions they navigated. A rift appears. During one of the Circle's regular meetings, a disagreement arose that shook the core of their unity. The issue at hand was the direction of their collective journey, whether to focus more on expanding their spiritual boundaries or to deepen their current practices and strengthen their local impacts. The debate grew heated, reflecting the diverse backgrounds and beliefs within the group. Julia listened, her heart heavy, as words turned sharp and personal. It was the first significant conflict since the circle's inception, and it threatened to unravel the fabric they had so carefully woven together. She knew they must address this rift before it widened further. Seeking wisdom. Disturbed by the discord but guided by her intuition, Julia proposed a retreat. The circle would spend a weekend in the nearby mountains, a place where the veil between worlds was said to be thin and where the natural beauty and isolation could help soothe and reset their intentions. As they settled into the serene landscape, surrounded by ancient forests and the gentle sounds of a running stream, Julia initiated a series of meditative practices designed to realign their energies and refocus on their shared purpose. The group engaged in deep personal sharing, expressing vulnerabilities and fears about their spiritual journey. The Vision Quest. On the second night of the retreat, under a sky scattered with stars, Julia led a vision quest. Each member of the circle ventured into the forest alone, tasked with seeking a vision or sign that could guide them in reconciling their differences and forging a path forward. Julia, sitting by the fire, waited for their return. One by one, they came back, each visibly moved by their experience. They spoke of visions that ranged from encounters with spiritual guides to symbolic dreams of weaving a vast tapestry, each thread representing a member of the circle. Reconciliation. As dawn broke over the mountains, the circle gathered. They shared their experiences and the insights they had gained. It became clear that their strength lay not in uniformity, but in their diversity, in the various strands of belief and practice that each brought to the circle. They agreed to weave these differences into a stronger, more inclusive tapestry. The retreat had reminded them that the journey they were on was not just about spiritual exploration, but also about community and the support it offered. They returned to Elmridge renewed and more connected, their resolve to work together deepened by the challenges they had overcome. A broader vision. Emboldened by the reconciliation, Julia planned a series of community dialogues to explore the rich tapestry of spiritual beliefs within Elmridge. These dialogues were designed not only to educate but also to celebrate the diverse spiritual practices represented in the town, reinforcing the idea that their strength came from their shared and varied spiritual heritages. An unexpected acknowledgement. As autumn gave way to the early frosts of winter, Julia received an unexpected letter from a national spiritual council, recognizing her efforts and the circle's impact on Elmridge. They were invited to share their story at a national conference, an opportunity to extend their influence and learn from other spiritual communities. Julia felt a profound sense of gratitude and responsibility as she prepared for the conference. The journey of the circle was a testament to the power of unity and the beauty of a community embracing its spiritual diversity. As she looked ahead, she was filled with hope and curiosity about the future, ready to weave new threads into the ever-expanding tapestry of their collective journey. Winter's chill had settled over Elmridge, but within the community the warmth of unity and the fire of spiritual exploration burned brighter than ever. As Julia prepared for the national conference, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here, and on the new paths that were unfolding before her and her circle. Preparing for the conference, Julia spent the weeks leading up to the conference in deep preparation, not only organizing her presentation, but also coordinating with members of the circle who would accompany her. They intended to share not just their successes, but the challenges and the invaluable lessons learned from their disagreements and resolutions. The anticipation was high, and the community support buoyed Julia's spirits. A gathering of many paths. The conference was held in a large city, a stark contrast to the quiet, introspective life of Elmridge. Julia and her group were introduced to a wide array of spiritual practitioners, from indigenous shamans to modern metaphysicists, each bringing unique perspectives and practices. The diversity was breathtaking, and the opportunity to learn and share was immense. Julia's presentation, titled "Weaving the Community Tapestry, Elmridge's journey of spiritual integration was met with enthusiastic interest. She spoke of the circle's formation, the challenges of integrating diverse spiritual beliefs, and the profound impact of their collective journey on the community. The presentation sparked lively discussions and debates, and many expressed interest in visiting Elmridge to experience their model of spiritual community firsthand. Unexpected encounters. Among the attendees was Dr. Helena Rosenthal, a psychologist specializing in transpersonal psychology, which explores the spiritual aspects of the human experience. Dr. Rosenthal was particularly intrigued by Julia's integration of psychological principles with spiritual practices. Their conversation extended well into the evening, exploring potential collaborations that could bridge their respective fields even further. New opportunities. Dr. Rosenthal invited Julia and her circle to participate in a research project that aimed to study the effects of spiritual practices on community health and psychological well-being. This project would not only provide scientific validation for some of the circle's work, but also open up avenues for new practices and insights. Julia was excited about the potential for this collaboration. It was a chance to demonstrate that their spiritual work had tangible, measurable benefits, which could encourage more communities to adopt similar practices. Reflections and revelations. As the conference drew to a close, Julia found herself at a small cafe, journal in hand, reflecting on all she had learned and the connections she had made. The realization that their small-town circle could have an impact on a national scale was both humbling and inspiring. She wrote about her vision for the future, a vision where Elmridge could serve as a beacon of spiritual and community health, inspiring other towns and cities to weave their own tapestries of diverse practices and beliefs. Returning home. With the conference behind them, Julia and her group returned to Elmridge, carrying with them a trove of new ideas, potential projects, and the excitement of forthcoming collaborations. The community welcomed them back with enthusiasm, eager to hear about their experiences and learn from the wider world of spiritual practice. As winter deepened, Julia felt a profound connection to her path and to the people who walked it with her. The challenges they had faced had only made their foundation stronger, and the opportunities ahead promised growth not just for their circle, but for the entire community. The threads of their destiny, once separate and distinct, were now intricately woven into a beautiful, resilient tapestry, full of color and life. Julia knew that whatever the future held, they were ready to meet it with open hearts and open minds. Together. D.B. As the heart of winter passed and the first hints of spring whispered promises of renewal, Elmridge felt the stirrings of change. The seeds of ideas and collaborations planted at the national conference began to sprout, and Julia's circle found themselves at the forefront of a burgeoning movement that linked spiritual growth with community health. Expanding horizons. The collaboration with Dr. Helena Rosenthal kicked off with enthusiasm. The research project, ambitiously titled The Spirit of Community, an empirical study of spiritual practices and community well-being, aimed to scientifically document the positive effects of integrating spiritual practices into community dynamics. Elmridge was to be the pilot community, a living laboratory for these transformative ideas. Julia organized workshops, invited speakers, and facilitated group sessions that were observed and recorded by Dr. Rosenthal's team. The town's residents, initially skeptical about being studied, soon embraced the attention as they saw real improvements in community cohesion and individual well-being. The power of shared experience. One particularly impactful workshop focused on shared histories, shared futures, where residents were encouraged to share their personal histories and aspirations for the future. These sessions not only deepened the bonds within the community, but also highlighted the diverse tapestry of experiences that enriched Elmridge. Julia watched as people who had lived parallel lives, sometimes just streets apart, discovered common ground and shared dreams. A visit from the past. Amidst these bustling activities, Julia received a surprise visit from her mentor, Professor Linda Carter, whom she hadn't seen since her university days. Linda had heard about Julia's work
and was intrigued by how her former student was applying psychological principles in such innovative ways. Linda's visit provided a profound perspective shift for Julia. They spent long hours discussing the integration of science and spirituality, exploring potential pitfalls and ethical considerations, ensuring that the community's welfare remained at the forefront of any research or practice. Integrating new technologies. One of the more futuristic aspects of the research project involved the use of technology to track the physiological effects of spiritual practices. Wearable devices were introduced to monitor heart rates, stress levels, and other indicators during meditation sessions, communal gatherings, and individual practices. The data collected was eye-opening. Preliminary results showed significant reductions in stress and improvements in overall health markers among participants. This empirical evidence provided a strong foundation for promoting spiritual practices as part of holistic community health programs. Facing challenges. However, not all was smooth sailing. As the project gained publicity, it also attracted criticism. Some academics and skeptics questioned the validity of integrating spirituality into public health initiatives, arguing that it blurred the lines between science and religion. Julia faced these challenges head-on, organizing public forums where skeptics and supporters alike could voice their concerns and learn more about the project's goals and methodologies. These discussions were crucial in refining the project and ensuring it remained open, inclusive, and scientifically grounded. Preparing for the next phase. As spring turned into summer, the project prepared to enter its next phase, which would expand beyond Elmridge to include other communities. Julia and her team worked diligently to document their processes, successes, and lessons learned to create a model that could be adapted by other towns and cities. The widening circle of Elmridge's influence was a testament to the power of community and spirituality, woven together through the dedication and vision of Julia and her collaborators. The journey ahead promised new challenges, but also greater opportunities to transform the landscape of community health and spiritual well-being. As the first year of the project drew to a close, Julia felt a mix of excitement and responsibility. Elmridge was no longer just her home. It was a beacon, a proof of concept that when people come together under a shared vision, the potential for growth and transformation knows no bounds. With summer in full bloom, the town of Elmridge not only basked in the warmth of the sun, but also in the glow of its newfound purpose. The Spirit of Community project had not only taken root but was flourishing, with Elmridge serving as a model of how spirituality could enrich community life. Julia watched with pride as the circle's influence extended beyond their town, their methods and outcomes sparking interest and adoption far afield. A model for others. As the project entered its second year, several communities began to implement the Elmridge model. Julia was invited to speak at various forums and conferences, sharing the story of Elmridge's transformation. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and Julia found herself guiding other leaders on how to integrate these practices into their own communities. The Community Garden Festival. One of the most successful initiatives was the annual Community Garden Festival, which Elmridge hosted at the peak of summer. The festival had grown from a small local event to a regional attraction, showcasing community gardening, sustainable practices, and spiritual workshops. This year, the festival included a special section dedicated to the results of the Spirit of Community project, featuring interactive exhibits on the science behind the spiritual practices and their benefits. Julia was particularly excited about the Living Lab exhibit, which allowed visitors to experience real-time monitoring of their physiological responses during meditation sessions. It was a hit, drawing curious crowds eager to see the science behind the serenity. Challenges and growth. However, with growth came new challenges. The influx of visitors and new residents drawn by Elmridge's reputation put pressure on local resources and infrastructure. Some longtime residents expressed concerns about the town losing its character, worried that Elmridge might become more of a tourist attraction than a tight-knit community. Julia recognized these concerns and addressed them by forming a new committee focused on sustainable growth.
This committee worked to ensure that all new initiatives were balanced with the needs and values of the existing community, aiming to preserve the town's identity while welcoming new ideas and people. Strengthening the circle. Amid these external activities, the circle itself continued to evolve. New members brought fresh perspectives, and the original members found deeper levels in their practices. Julia encouraged everyone to participate in leadership roles, fostering a sense of ownership and responsibility across the group. This empowerment helped maintain the circle's integrity and purpose, even as its activities expanded. Personal reflections. As the second year of the project drew to a close, Julia took time for personal reflection. She visited the old oak tree in Willow Park, where her journey had begun years ago, with a whisper on the wind. Sitting under its sprawling branches, she meditated on her path, the growth she had witnessed, and the future. She thought about her own role and how it might evolve as the project continued to expand. Julia felt a profound connection to her work, but also recognized the need to ensure her own spiritual and emotional health. She contemplated taking a sabbatical to explore new spiritual landscapes and recharge her own energies. Looking ahead, as autumn approached, signaling a time of harvest and reflection, Julia felt both a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. Elmridge had not only changed on the outside, but had transformed in spirit. The lessons learned here about growth, community, and spirituality were now rippling outwards, touching lives far beyond its borders. Julia knew that the road ahead would be filled with both opportunities and obstacles, but she trusted in the resilience and spirit of the community she had helped to nurture. The future was bright, and she was ready to meet it with an open heart and a clear mind, always guided by the light within. As the leaves turned brilliant shades of orange and red, Elmridge prepared to embrace the cycle of renewal inherent in the autumn season. Julia's commitment to personal and community growth had fostered a profound transformation in Elmridge, one that resonated throughout the wider region. Now, as she considered a sabbatical, the community faced the challenge of continuing their journey without her daily guidance. Preparing for transition, Julia's decision to take a sabbatical was met with mixed emotions within the circle. While everyone supported her need for rest and personal growth, there was also apprehension about her absence. To ease the transition, Julia spent weeks training and empowering members of the circle to take on leadership roles. She organized workshops and retreats to bolster their confidence and ensure the continuity of the community's spiritual activities. The Elmridge Spiritual Symposium. One of Julia's final initiatives before her departure was the Elmridge Spiritual Symposium, a gathering that brought together spiritual leaders, community organizers, and academics from across the country. The symposium focused on the theme of sustainable spiritual communities, exploring how the integration of spirituality and community wellness could be maintained and nurtured over time. The event was a resounding success, featuring panels, discussions, and workshops that highlighted the innovative practices developed in Elmridge. It served not only as a showcase of what had been achieved, but also as a brainstorming platform for future endeavors, legacy, and leadership. As the symposium concluded, Julia felt reassured about the circle's future. The members had shown remarkable growth and were ready to assume greater responsibility. She took particular pride in seeing younger members who had joined the circle out of curiosity, now leading sessions and speaking with confidence about their spiritual journeys. Julia's sabbatical. With the community in capable hands, Julia began her sabbatical. She traveled first to a meditation retreat in India, immersing herself in ancient practices and teachings. The experience deepened her understanding of her own spiritual path and reinvigorated her passion for her work. She spent time in silent reflection, in lively discussions with fellow spiritual seekers, and in the peaceful solitude of nature. Elmridge continues. Back in Elmridge, the circle maintained the momentum Julia had instilled. They continued the community projects like the Green Souls Initiative and kept the dialogue open with the wider community to ensure that everyone felt involved and valued. The circle also started a mentorship program, pairing experienced members with newcomers to foster a sense of belonging and to pass on the knowledge and traditions that had become so valuable to the town. Challenges and achievements. Despite Julia's absence, the community faced challenges with resilience and creativity. An unexpected economic downturn tested their resourcefulness, but the circle's emphasis on community support and local sustainability helped Elmridge weather the storm better than many other towns. The mentorship program proved to be a crucial element during this time, as it allowed the community to remain cohesive and strong, even as they adapted to economic pressures. It became a model that other towns began to look to for guidance on building community resilience. Reflections and reconnections. As autumn gave way to winter, Julia returned to Elmridge, her spirit refreshed and her mind filled with new ideas. She was greeted with warmth and excitement, and the stories of how the community had not only survived, but thrived in her absence filled her with immense pride and joy. Looking to the future. With Julia back, the community gathered to celebrate the end of the year and to plan for the future. They discussed the lessons learned during her sabbatical and how these could be integrated into their ongoing projects. Excited by the potential for new growth, Julia proposed the idea of expanding their model beyond Elmridge, helping other communities to weave their own tapestries of spirituality and sustainability. As the snow began to fall, blanketing Elmridge in quiet serenity, Julia felt a profound connection to the cycles of nature and life. The journey of the past years had shown her that growth often comes in cycles, and each phase brings its own lessons and challenges. With her community by her side, she was ready to embark on the next cycle of growth, filled with hope and anticipation for what the future might bring.